Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cape Charles Town Council Town Hall meeting, February the 16th, 2022. Can I get a roll call?
Buckles present.
Holloway present.
Bennett present.
O'Brien present.
Grossman present.
Fulmer present.
Letting me know we've established a quorum. I do want to welcome everybody here this evening. Thank you all for coming out. This is a very important issue at hand. We've got a couple presentations, and hopefully we can answer a lot of y'all's questions. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hosey. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, also want to thank everybody for coming and welcome to the first of two town hall meetings on this important topic. So, just for everyone's understanding, can you hear me? How about now?
Might have to turn it on.
Mine works.
How about now? How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I guess it has to get really close to it, I guess. Again, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. This is a really important discussion, and appreciate your participation in it. Just for everyone's understanding, we've scheduled two of these town hall meetings. One's tonight, and one's going to be Saturday at 2 o'clock. Both meetings are going to cover the exact same information. The only reason for two meetings is to just address the availability of the public. So in case somebody couldn't make one of them, there's another one available. As the mayor said, this is a town hall style meeting. This is an informal meeting. Okay, the rules will be relaxed. We're going to put on a couple of presentations. Virginia American Water is going to start with a presentation and kind of give you their introduction to the community. We have our consultant that we hired to help us evaluate all of this information is NewGen. And Eric from NewGen will be giving a short presentation after that, kind of explaining his role in the process. I'll come back with a short overview on where we are in the process, and then we're going to turn it over to you and hear what you have to say and answer your questions, hopefully. So with that, Casey Allen from Virginia American Water, I'll let you introduce your folks.
Check and make sure this thing works. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Casey Allen. I'm the Vice President of Operations with Virginia American Water Company, and I'm excited to be here tonight, one, to talk a little bit about our company, but also, we know how special this community is, so being available, answering questions, that's why I brought a variety of folks with me. We've got a lot of expertise in this room. And I'll go around real quick and just let folks introduce themselves, talk about their role, and we'll dive right on into our presentation. So,
good evening. I'm Christina McGee. I'm the Director of Engineering.
Good evening. J.R. Fiddler. I'm the Operations Superintendent right across the bay in the Northern Neck Middle Peninsula area. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Emery. I'm the Senior Manager of Finance.
Hi, I'm Rob Stoy. I'm Vice President of Business Development. That's Dennis Emery. Yeah, just writing them all down. Rob Stoy, Vice President of Business Development for American Water Corporate.
Good evening, Christian Volk, Water Quality Manager, Virginia and Maryland.
Thanks. So our thoughts for this presentation, we're kind of keeping the slides brief. We thought, the value might be more in the question and answering. So I'm going to start off by covering a little bit of an overview of our company. Yes, sir.
Do you have any handouts that we follow along? Do you have any educational information for the public here as we can follow along?
We don't have copies of the presentation, but we do have some handout material. Mary Beth can grab that right now.
We will put the presentation on the website.
Yep.
Afterwards.
You say you don't have copies of it. Why?
Mr. Wendell. Mr. Wendell, can we save the questions to the question and answer? Let them do the presentation, then you can ask the question, please. Yeah, after the presentation, we'll have a question and answer. So let them get through the presentation first, okay?
Yep, absolutely. After this meeting, though, the presentation would absolutely be made available online so folks can go back and refer to it. Our company, Virginia American Water, we're in multiple communities in the state of Virginia, over 25 communities in the state. You can kind of see the layout of our footprint We have been in the city of Alexandria since the mid-1800s. We also provide water service to the city of Hopewell, Prince William, Dale City area. We provide water and wastewater services to 20,000 customers there. As JR mentioned, we have several small community systems in the Northern Neck Peninsula. We also provide services to Fort Lee, which is right outside of Hopewell, and recently partnering with the town of Waverly. So some of the things we're going to cover in this presentation really quick, and I'm going to touch base on some of them. Employees, right off the bat, you'll see in our presentation we've made a commitment to keep employees. Not only keep them, but we think that our company is going to be a great place for them to work. Looking at things like pay and benefits, we've had opportunity to talk with employees to kind of go over that. The other thing about the employees is training and development opportunities for them. Our company, has metrics in place that every employee that works for us gets at least 25 hours of training. And in Virginia specifically, we just completed a training facility upgrade in our Dale City area. So we've got a place to bring folks in, provide training, hands-on training, and fix things like water mains, hydrant maintenance, things like that. Community involvement, we're going to give a little bit of overview of how we become involved in the community, things that we do to help support the community in other ways besides water and wastewater. We're going to talk about efficiencies that we bring within a community, both that we currently serve and potentially the town of Cape Charles. So things like technology, tools, resources, that we bring in as a company that, a municipality might not have access to. We're going to talk about investments, both current investments that we, make within the communities we currently serve. So Christina's going to talk a little bit about, some of our capital improvements we've made in the state of Virginia, as well as our plans for potential capital improvements for the town of Cape Charles. And then most importantly, dive into our customer service and topics like rates. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Christian Volk to talk, first and foremost about water quality.
Thanks. So just let's talk about water quality. And I just have a few key points. The first one is going to be about compliance. And really maintaining compliance is critical to us. And we really strive to maintain compliance, which means we have to meet all US EPA and state regulations. And to make sure we meet compliance, we do a lot of testing. So in your case, for the Cape Charles system, you had in the past some issues meeting some disinfection byproduct limits. And our first priority would be to conduct a study to make sure we can decrease those disinfection byproducts, so after treatment. The next key point is going to be about lab testing, and all the advanced lab testing using sophisticated equipment is going to be done at one central location. We have a central lab in Belleville, Illinois. And we also do a lot of testing in the treatment facilities. So we have labs, certified labs, and we also rely on online monitoring, so online analyzers. And in your case, it would help to have online monitoring on key parameters like iron, manganese, hardness. And if you see one of those parameters going up, you can quickly adjust treatment to avoid customer complaints. The last point is about research and innovation. So we also conduct research. All the research about testing is done at the central laboratory, and all the applied research, so water treatment research, it's going to be done central laboratory and also the treatment facilities. And I'm going to give you an example. We did a study in Virginia a few years ago. We had one site experiencing taste and smell issues. So we did a study and we tried an advanced oxidation system using UV light and peroxide the study worked really well. We were able to decrease, to eliminate the smell and taste. And last year, we were able to build this new system, so advanced oxidation system there, so we are ready for the next time when we do have an issue with a bad smell and taste. That's all I have about water quality.
I apologize for the accent, but I guess between Christian and I and his French accent and my country accent, we'll make it a little bit more difficult for you guys tonight. Being on the front line, I guess I'm a little bit more exposed to our customers in the community, maybe more so than some of the others. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our community partnerships. It's important to us to be involved in the communities that we serve. A lot of this is driven by our employees. What they want to be involved with, we want to be involved with them for the communities. So these are some of the examples that we have, some of the programs that we have. Just last year in 2021, I believe we had over 300 hours of volunteer service in 20 different organizations throughout the state with Virginia American Water employees. With all of those volunteer hours, we're lucky enough to have what's called the American Water Charitable Foundation, which matches our time and monetary donations. And so it's a one-to-one basis, $1,000 per employee per year. And just to give you an example, I have two of my work family members. They had both young kids that grew up in Little League, boy and girl, each one. And they coached, they worked on the ball fields, were both on the board for the Little League for a number of years. And each year, American Water matched their donation in time by sending a $1,000 check for each one, $2,000 total, to the Little League every year. And so just involvement like that in the community is a real plus that our company has. I wanted to mention our environmental grant program. Last year and Mary Beth can correct me if I'm wrong, 4,400? 7,500 given out to various people in the area. And that involves initiatives to improve groundwater, protect the watershed. We also have the Firefighting Grant program, and that was for 5 different fire and rescue services, $4,400. That's where that number was coming from. And then, just to give a couple other examples that relate to Cape Charles. In the city of Hopewell, we've really gotten involved with partnering with the city and being involved in their downtown revitalization program. And I just want to make sure I got the name right. This is not my district, but it's a very good example. They have a Third Thursday program. And so our employees, Casey being one of them, goes down and helps to set up. They deliver water, hand out water during the event. But most importantly, they partner with the city to put up and take down every month. It's pretty neat. One of the other programs that I'm kind of passionate about is the last picture on the right. We have a local food bank in the Northern Neck, and we partner with them to do a gleaning program. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's pretty neat. We go out and we harvest the food, and it goes towards people for the food bank, and we've gotten a lot of participation in the state. A lot of people will come down and want to be a part of that, which kind of brings me to my last point. It's not going to be just your employees that benefit from this and their contributions. You're going to see all of us there, or a lot, from other parts of the states too, because we want to be here. And this isn't the first time I've been in Cape Charles. I grew up vacationing here. I live right across the bay. We would come over for lunch and fish. We enjoy it. So all I need is a reason to be here to help out and help with the community and get involved with the community. So our next one is our customer service, and I kind of want to hit on some of the bullets here. The last 2 years, we've all had to go through this turbulent period of the pandemic, and we feel like we had a really good approach to battling that. We were kind of the leaders in that. We were the first in the state or one of the first utilities, if not the first, to get rid of the mandatory mandate for turning off people for non-pay. And that was big because we knew that the water and sewer bills were going to be the last thing on people's minds when their jobs were being affected. We didn't want to be a burden. So we turned that off. We expanded our payment arrangements. We also were able to have over $1 million in CARES Act funds that we made available to our customers to help subsidize some of this. And then, just to point out some of the other services that we have 24/7 customer service, and I know, that a lot of people don't want to have the call center, and they're concerned about that, but that's just one avenue of the technology that we have. You call into the call center, they call out to us in the district, whether it's a supervisor or the on-call employee. That person will come right out and address your situation that night if it's an emergency, next business day if it's not, and we're there. I mean, you have the customer response that you should have. But to partner with that, the technology that we have available, we have a state-of-the-art online management system called My Water. You can view your bills, see your usage, pay your bills, and you can track all of the usage that you have in the month. The main thing that I really like is we have an alert notification system, and it's called Code Red. I don't know if you all use that for emergency services or your police department. If we were on Tazewell Avenue working on someone's meter box or valve or main leak or whatever it is, if you have signed up for the notification, you will get an alert saying Virginia American Water will be in your area. You may see issues with water pressure or whatever it is, you may not, but it's a notification letting you know we'll be there working. And it's a really neat program that we have. Other than that, I wanted to tell a story about, I guess, the technology that we do have. We have radio read meters where we can go in, we can see your usage down to the hour for the last 3 months. And we had a story about a lady who had called in, and she was a little upset. She was worried that the usage that she had was more than she really had. And when we got there, the field tech came out to the premise. We talked to her and we said, "Ma'am, this is your usage," and we pulled it up on the iPad. We showed her water usage for the last 3 months, broken down to the hour. And you could see the whole expression on her face change, and she knew what the situation was. Between 3 o'clock and 5:30 or 6 o'clock every day during the week, she was using a ton of water. And it turned out her kids were getting off the school bus. She didn't get home until after 6:30. They were all taking baths, running the water, playing in the yard. And right then she realized that I really was using this amount of water. So she was able to take that technology and what we offered her to teach her kids about water management. So it's pretty neat.
The thing that I like and I dislike about technology is it's constantly changing. And usually it's for the good, but sometimes it takes a while to catch up with it. And, JR talked a lot about the customer-facing technology, so, having access to real-time meter usage, things like that is very helpful for customers in a lot of ways to track and trend usage. There's a lot of technology that goes on behind the scenes in the water industry, that we bring to the table that a lot of communities either don't deploy on themselves or don't really have, access to. So, as an example, GIS systems, SCADA systems, the advanced metering systems that JR is talking about, some of the things that we have kind of as a part of our technology package as a company is really easy for us to bring in new communities into. So GIS as an example, we have a GIS platform. The town of Waverly, which is actually the photo that we have here, that we're currently partnering with an acquisition. That's a community that struggled with maps. So out in the field, their field employees really didn't have good access to maps. They had some hand-drawn stuff or some paper maps, nothing to the point of, as-built or original designs. So as we're going through the integration process, we have sent our team out to go take GIS points of hydrants, valves, mains, and stuff that are exposed as their folks are working on leaks. And with those data points, we're able to loop them right in, bring them into GIS so that future operations become more efficient. The same thing with the SCADA systems that Christian was talking about, monitoring critical parameters around water quality and also wastewater treatment processes. If you get online analyzers and technology and loop that into the systems that we already have, you can gain efficiencies in operations, but you can also improve, the compliance aspect and get ahead of things that might cause taste and odor concerns. And then another thing that I'll touch base on, the distribution, folks that are out in the field, having ease of access to, work order information, knowledge about the system, being able to access records, or even account history, for a particular customer at their fingertips is very useful to troubleshoot quickly, but then also address customers' concerns in the moment.
So in addition to some of that technology, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we have an asset management system called MapCall. We use that to bring all the data together for all of the assets that we manage. And between that and the GIS, I can do amazing things with hydraulic modeling, which allows me to understand where we have troubles in the systems, how to flush the system correctly, and with the least amount of water wasted. So that's one of the things that engineering brings to it. But broadly, what Casey was talking about is just the amount of platforms that are available to us at American Water. We have an exorbitant amount of opportunities for technology, using that technology to be as efficient as possible with the water that we have. And in a community like this, we want to be sure that we're not wasting water whenever possible. So those technologies will be readily available to the people in Cape Charles right away. And for us in engineering, it makes a big difference on how we invest our asset dollars, and then that translates into the projects that we're going to work on. And so I'm just going to share with you guys some projects that we've finished here in Virginia in the last 2 years that I'm very proud of. So starting in the left top corner is the operations center that Casey spoke about. This is a operations center for our Prince William, brings our water and wastewater together. What's really neat about this facility is in the back of it, which I know this picture is an aerial and it's a little hard to see, we actually have a training mock-up that allows our employees to learn how to change meters, how to effectively cut out valves, how to clamp brakes. It's a really wonderful hands-on opportunity for all of our employees. And I think it's a really great place for our people to really get into it sort of the hard way and learn it and then not have to worry about it when they're actually in the trenches. So also down below is our Hopewell Plant, and Christian spoke a little bit about that, and that's our biggest surface water plant here in Virginia. And then in the middle at the top, we have our wastewater plant, and we recently finished a decanter project there. We were probably in a little bit of trouble there because our decanters had aged out, and we were able to replace these decanters before they failed, and we didn't get any NOVs because of it. So it's a really timely and important project. Then those are some new pumps, those green monsters are some new pumps that we installed in Hopewell. And below it is new electrical gear, which one thing that we notice in water industry is folks sort of don't pay attention to the electrical gear. And I'll just say this. You can have all the pumps in the world, but if you don't have the right electric coming in, they're not going to pump anything. So it's very important. And then upper right-hand corner is a Westmoreland well water station that we recently completed. And then in the bottom and right-hand corner is the UVAOP that Christian spoke about that we installed in Hopewell. So those are our projects, and I'll turn it over to you.
I'll close this out. And we've got a lot to cover. I think the thing that we're really trying to demonstrate to the town of Cape Charles is that, we have a variety of different water and wastewater systems that we operate within the state of Virginia. And that's just Virginia. When you look at our footprint across American Water as a whole, there's a broad range of engineering expertise and experience involved with just about anything that you can imagine that might come up in a community. So when you look at the challenges that, might be facing Cape Charles now, plus things that come down in the future, right? Events, weather events, hurricanes, things like that. We have a broad amount of experience in helping communities navigate those and making capital improvements to address those issues. And that's pretty much it. I'll close it out. I love this photo. You know, JR mentioned it in his presentation. You know, undoubtedly, some of our faces are certainly new to many of you, but, you know, there's many on our team who Cape Charles is not new to us. You know, for my family person, that's my 3 boys. You know, we vacation here as well. And just super excited about the opportunity. We know how special this community is, and looking forward at the potential opportunity of becoming part of your community.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. So I'd like to introduce Eric from NewGen, who is our consultant helping us navigate through this process, and I'd like to give him a.
Give me one second, sir. We've got this presentation, and then we've got a little speech at the end, and then we're going to ask questions. So give us 1 second.
My presentation is 4 slides. It will be very, very brief. I appreciate your patience. Thank you, John. It's the first slide. Thank you, John. Thank you, council. Thank you, citizens. Ratepayers, presumably. I will be brief in respect for your time for spending it with here tonight. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. Oh, is that on me? I'm sorry. Thank you. Next slide to myself, please. Thank you. My name is Eric Coloquia. I can spell that for you if you're taking notes. I am with NewGen Strategies and Solutions. We are a management and economic firm focused on municipal utilities. All aspects of municipal utilities, including transactions, including fair market value appraisals, rates, and financial forecasting. We're a small firm. We're about 50 people. I work out of our Annapolis, Maryland office. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We have been working with staff and council. We have not engaged with Virginia American. Our role in this project was to evaluate these proposals. We are serving as an advisor. We are not making recommendations. My job is to answer questions and provide information. Some of the material we put together as part of our evaluation is what we're calling a decision matrix. Again, this is for information only. This is not something you look at and make an immediate decision. It is something you include in your evaluation. Each of these criteria were developed in coordination with staff and council. What is important to us going through this process? What do we look at when we evaluate different ownership scenarios of these utilities? The criteria are listed there. I won't go through them individually. The weighting is how much we weight that criteria. The higher the weighting, the more important it is to the evaluators being ourselves, the council and the staff, and the ratepayers. The green arrows simply mean that in that criteria, the scenario presented was scored essentially or evaluated to be more advantageous. Customer affordability and rate stability is one of the more heavily weighted. The need for professional expertise. We need good people to run the systems. We make a lot of assumptions in our evaluation. We're going to talk a lot about our assumptions. The ratings here are how confident are we in these assumptions? How is our system going to grow? How are our costs going to grow in the future? What types of revenue is going to be available to the system? The other ones, the only other one I'll mention is reputation and track record. Owning a water and wastewater utility is an important job. How have each of these owners in the past coordinated owning and operating these systems going forward? And you can see the total score at the bottom. Again, this is for consideration when evaluating these proposals. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I am too used to having somebody do all my work for me. I'm sorry. Again, these are just a description of the criteria. I went through some of these. I won't go through them again.
You know, we really can't read any of these. Yeah. We should have all of that in our hands right now. So if you could at least go to 1 or 2 points that you have up there.
Sure. These are the points I mentioned before about the criteria. Customer affordability. How does the scenario's rate projection? How are rates projected in each scenario? Need for skilled manpower. Under each ownership scenario is the ability to attract and retain qualified operators included in that scenario. Assumptions affecting rates. I'll go back to some of the assumptions that are listed here. Capital expenses. What is the investment in the system going forward? How has the town and how has the proposer estimated the capital investment in the future? How confident are we in those investments? Incorporation of the Annexation Agreement. That one's a very complicated one. I will just briefly say the town has a current agreement that involves transfer of money for expansion of the systems. How is that incorporated in the current ownership profile and the alternative? How confident are we that we can account for it properly? Connection fee revenue, again, currently when customers connect to the system, the town gets revenue based on their investment in the system. How is that accounted for in each scenario? Confidence in system growth. If we are making assumptions about new customers, how confident are we that those new customers will materialize? More customers obviously means more revenues. Sometimes it means more expenses. How confident are we in that? The rest are listed here. Reputation and track record. Again, how have these owners of these systems performed in the past? And how do we think they're going to perform in the future? Customer service. The folks from Virginia American touched on their customer service methodology. You have experienced the customer service methodology of the town. How is that incorporated into our projections? How do ratepayers feel about those two different approaches? Because they may be different. Treatment of existing employees, that was also touched on in the first presentation. We want to make sure we protect our existing employees. How does that look in an alternative scenario? Net cash flow to the town. There are a lot of dollars involved. How do we estimate what dollars will be available to the town under each scenario? And again, this material will be provided on the website and in print for those who want to look at it more closely.
Are you an accountant by trade?
I am not an accountant. My degree is in economics and mathematics from Johns Hopkins. Thank you. We do employ engineers and accountants, although we are not an engineering or accounting firm. One of our key evaluations was a 10-year forward-looking forecast of what customer bills may be. Forget about assumptions and ownership and revenues. We know what you care about. What's our bill going to be? 3 scenarios shown here. The yellow line is under what we're calling the status quo scenario. The town retains ownership of the systems, needs to make the necessary capital investments in those systems, and has the existing and a slightly larger customer base based on growth assumptions in the future. So this is the self-contained status quo system. The blue line is for reference. That is your current bill for a 2,000 gallon per month customer currently in the town. The gray line is based on the information in the proposal. Again, we did not coordinate with Virginia American during our evaluation. Based on the information in the proposal and the information from our experience, that is an estimation of the possible trajectory of customer bills at the 2,000 gallon level assumptions to make a decision. Again, we are not decision makers, we are providing information. This shows some of the assumptions that go into our bill forecasts. We include the current town's expenses, estimations of escalations in costs going forward, inflation. We included additional costs for the town to hire that necessary manpower, the additional manpower for operating and owning these systems in the future. We've made estimations of debt service to take, if the system needs to take on additional debt for new projects, what that looks like going forward. We've included a drawdown on utility reserves. We need to support the system both with rate revenue and reserve revenue that we've built up and will be collecting for capacity fees in the future. 34 new connections a year is our estimated customer growth. That's based on information provided by the town staff. This includes development going forward, and it's consistent with plans that we were provided by staff and their estimations of the utilities in the future. Again, the Virginia American proposal was based on only the information we had from the proposal. It's a notional projection, meaning it is not exact. Things will change in the future that may impact it. Again, this is based on current information. It includes cost escalation, an estimation of $10 million of capital improvements, again, based on the proposal, and the same customer growth assumptions in the future. I'm going to go back to the chart real quick. Again, looking at this is not the only decision we need to make, but this is our evaluation based on the most currently available information and our experience with many of these transactions, both in Virginia and nationwide, in the past. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Did you take into consideration that when this infrastructure comes off the tax rolls of the town, because right now the town does not pay taxes on that infrastructure. It's going to be taxed now to American Water.
Yes.
Is that in your mind?
Yes, the private ownership.
What is your assumption as to the amount of taxes based on the rate that will be charged?
I don't have that detailed information for you right now. The forecast under the private ownership includes all of their expenses, including additional taxes that the town does not pay. Yes.
But what is that percentage?
I don't have an exact dollar amount or a percentage figure. Again, this is based on the information in the proposal, which didn't have those detailed figures.
Can we have people use the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
for
hogging the
questions,
microphone again.
Since we have people online.
The question was, did we include the taxes that Virginia American would have to pay if they were to own the system in these forecasts? And my answer was yes.
But you didn't have any amount, you have an assumption, but you don't know what that figure is.
Correct.
So what was the figure that you used for the assumption?
I don't have that number with me off the top of my head tonight. Again, the question was, what was that specific assumption? And my answer was, I don't have it tonight.
Should we be stating our name?
No, you can just talk. You can just talk freely.
Well, Lorraine Huckler. I have a question about the timeline of 10 years as your model, because in year 11, the debt will have been paid, the last debt payment will happen in the 10th year. And according to the 2022 budget, the debt payment is $470,000 a year. And so on year 11, the town will have that revenue available to spend for maintenance, increasing salaries, replacement of assets, upgrades. It's a significant financial event. Why didn't you use a longer term, say a 15-year term, and then the 5 years of revenue would total 2.3 million? It's a significant amount of money. And although it's the longer the projection, the less accuracy or certainty about your projection, you know, the difference between year 10 and 11 in terms of certainty is a small amount. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. Thank you. The 10-year forecast is generally, as you mentioned, a time frame in which we can be reasonably certain. The town has a 5-year capital improvement plan where they define the projects and the estimated cost of those projects. Beyond those 5 years, we made assumptions based on additional maintenance and replacement projects that the town would need to incur. Some of those assumptions may include additional debt service that will layer on top of the existing debt service that will be paid off at the year 11. In addition, as these systems depreciate, and you're right, a typical system has a long life, 15, 20, sometimes even 50 years for buried assets and fixed assets. A 10-year projection gives us a reasonable estimation of these, given that in the 11 to 20-year time frame, our assumptions essentially deteriorate. Now, the decrease in debt service is apparent. Our assumption is the town would increase spending on things like capital replacement and potentially additional debt service related to the maintenance and possible upgrades of their systems in those out years.
But for analysis like this, where we're making a decision that's forever, it seems like it's an artificial boundary when you have a significant financial event occurring in the 11th year. I mean, this is a 50-year plan. We're on year 10 or 11. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, I'll chime in on that to help answer that as well. It's a valid point that some of our debt, not all of it's going to expire in 11, only some of it. Some of our debt goes several years beyond that. But again, the assumption is that this was based on not accumulating any new debt for 10 years. But beyond 10 years, we didn't make that assumption because new debt could very well be possible. It's trying to absorb the capital investment needed to do some of the things that are needed would make a pretty significant rate shock if we had to invest all that capital at one time. You incur debt to spread that out. So the odds are that either additional capital would have to be spent as cash or additional debt would have to be taken after the 10th year. Again, when you get out that far, there's just too many variables to know for sure what's happening. So the point's well taken that debt does start to go away after 10 years, but we cannot assume that new debt would not be incurred.
One of the things I'm curious about or whatever is with the town per se and many towns on the shore, they've been subject to grants, et cetera, quite often. Does the town still have the ability to get to grants? Would American Water Works have the ability to get grants, or was that going to be strictly private money then?
So I'll take that one, really quick. I think, there's somewhat of a misconception out there that as a private company, we're not eligible for grants, and that's not true. As a matter of fact, our company has recently, obtained a couple of different types of grants for operations in Virginia. Christina, as an example, I'm not certain of the amount for our lead service lines, but we obtained a grant through VDH to replace lead service lines in the city of Alexandria. We also recently, got a $1.2 million grant through VDH through some COVID funding to help with system improvements in the Eastern Shore. So we are absolutely eligible for grants like a community.
Would you all also be able to work theoretically if the town was indicated they wanted to take care of service out at the traffic light in 13? Would you all be able to run services out there according to the town?
So you're talking about extending services to
Whose decision is that?
Yeah,
How
so
is that
I think,
mandated?
there's a variety of different ways that could work, in terms of expanding services outside of town. That's something that really needs to be discussed a little bit more closely with the town and how they would like to see the growth of the community project forward. But we absolutely do expand our service territories when communities support it, to answer your question broadly.
So could I jump in, Mr. Mayor? Just.
Go ahead, I was just going to get him to hand the mic to that gentleman over there.
Okay.
Give us 1 second. Go ahead, let him jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
Hi. I'm interested to understand what is your footprint on the peninsula and why are you so interested in Cape Charles specifically?
Yep. So this will be our first system, on the Eastern Shore. As JR pointed out, we are on in the northern neck on that peninsula. There's a few different reasons why we are interested in partnering with the town of Cape Charles. Most certainly one of them is getting outside of our current footprint. We believe that might provide an opportunity to grow because we understand that there is a need for expanded wastewater services in there that, as an example. The other reason is, the town has needs, and we feel like we bring a variety of solution to a lot of those needs, addressing issues like rates, addressing issues like the water quality, the improvements that are needed in the system. When you look at, communities across Virginia, not all of them kind of have the same story. And, when you compare that to some of the solutions our company brings, it could be a very different, situation for a different community. But the solutions we bring specifically for Cape Charles just aligns very well. We thought it was a good fit for us to be in this community.
But the issues that if potentially the town is facing regarding the water, is it necessary to sell the water? Could we find a company or companies that will provide solutions?
I'll take that one. So I guess it might be helpful to explain a little bit about the environment that utilities operate in. Okay, utilities operate under what's called an enterprise fund, meaning that all revenues and expenditures must balance within that fund. In other words, it has to pay for itself. So you don't supplement utilities with other revenue sources. It all has to balance based on rates. One of the issues that we're struggling with the town right now is we have a very small rate base. The number of customers that we spread all our costs out on is relatively small. So when we have a fairly expensive cost, there's no place to go but put it in the rates, and rates go up. You can see where our rates are now, and what that yellow line projects is that we would do just that. That if we retained ownership, we would have to either hire staff or seek contract management of someone who can come in and has the expertise, the engineering expertise, the regulatory experience, the compliance experience, all the things that we're lacking now. Because frankly, we're not doing a good job. I mean, over the past number of years, we've gotten quite a few warnings and violations from regulatory agencies. We need to step up our game if we keep it. So we have to bake in. So if we hire a management firm to come in and help us, whatever that cost is, it gets added to the already existing costs. That then gets projected to the rates, and the rates go up. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at something like what American Water brings. They have the ability to spread costs over a much larger rate base, which brings the cost down for everybody. And that's why you're seeing the gray line go down and the yellow line go up. Our rate base will go up slightly based on the growth assumptions that Eric explained, but our growth rate will not capture all of our costs, and that's why you're seeing a continuing escalation in the yellow line. The gray line would represent, after some period of time, Virginia Water would go to the State Corporation Commission, which is the regulatory agency which drives all of this and approves all of this. And if they approved it, they could move Cape Charles into that consolidated rate, which brings our rates down. The other point I want to mention in process, just so that everyone understands where we are. So we've been working on this for quite a while. We got our first unsolicited proposal. We didn't ask for it. They showed up with a proposal and said, hey, we're interested in buying your utilities. According to state law, what we have to do then is we have to advertise and say, let the world know, hey, we've got this unsolicited proposal, so that other people have the opportunity to propose as well. And when we did that, we got our second proposal. So we evaluated those two proposals. A lot of it was confidential because the different terms between the proposals were proprietary. The council selected Virginia Water of the two proposals as being the one they wanted to bring to the public for the next level of discussion. So that's all we are right now, is trying to give the public, let the public know what we know about what we've learned in the past 18 months. To try to explain to you why we're considering this, why we think it's worth bringing to you, and to get your input. The next step in this process is not to decide, are we selling our utilities or not. That's not the next step. The next step, should the council advise me to do so, would be then to sit down with this company and start negotiating an agreement. Agreement that has all the details that we haven't begun to negotiate yet. Things like the question on expansion. How would we deal with that? Those are things that we would sit down and try to negotiate in a final agreement. How and when the company might try to make rate cases to the SEC. Those are things that we would negotiate. How we would incorporate things like the Annexation Agreement, a complex document. How would we incorporate that into this agreement going forward? All of that is still yet to come. We're still in the very early stages of this. So the next step would be to try to work some of these things out in a comprehensive agreement. Once those details are laid out, we come back to you. It's a public document. You review it. you get another chance to come and talk about it and tell us what you think. So it's kind of an incremental process, and we may not have exact answers for you tonight because some of these things haven't been worked out yet. So I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for where we are in the process.
John, they have never addressed, they had these municipalities up here, but they never said what the average rate was for their water bills or for their affluents. What is the average water bill at Hopewell, at all these other communities?
Yeah, so, you know, I don't have the exact rates.
But we need to know all this as we go forward, because there's people here, I'm a homeowner, there's other homeowners here. We need to know what the rates are going to be. Have you ever heard of Seacliff, New York?
I have not.
American Water?
No, I have not.
Okay, their bills shot up to $500 a month. And this is from American Water, and I have all the information here that I'm going to pass along to the board. Okay, I come from Long Island. I was a 20-year elected official. Okay, I understand American Water is a very good company, but this is a finite, small community. Okay, we're not building out. We're not growing. Okay, we're stuck within the frame that we have. And within this frame, we have to manage. We also, once we go to American Water, we lose all our tax benefits. Right now, if you go and you bond with a band, a rand, or a tan, okay, you could put that on our tax rolls. At the end of the year, we get to write that off from the government and from the state of Virginia. Any improvements that are done through American Water and are put on our rates, that's a bill that we pay, we get no benefit for, other than the use of the water. So these are things that this board needs to really look at, you know, before we go forward and entertain. Yeah, you're a wonderful company and you're going to take the burden off of the town, and that is a wonderful thing. However, we have to see what that cost benefit is worth to us as a community, both on the tax side, both on the revenue side, and are we willing to do that? Because 10 years is not enough time. You need to go 50 years out so we know what the rate is going to be 50 years out, because 10 years goes very quickly, and then the rates start to go up, and all of the capital improvements that you put in, and deservingly so. You're a public corporation. You're entitled to make a profit, but that profit comes out of all of us. So all of these things, I'm asking the board to please go very slowly on this before we go forward. If we can get guarantees from American Water that our bill is going to be what they say, if it's 10 years, it's going to be down to $80 or $100, and they're willing to put that in writing, and then another 10 years, it may go up another $10, yeah, I'm all for it. But I guarantee you're not going to get that.
Yep.
Okay, so what we need to do as a community is really do our homework, because it sounds really good and they offer a lot, they bring a lot. But once you give up control, and local control has always been the most important thing to anyone in a small community. That's why we buy in small communities. That's why we buy in Cape Charles. That's why we buy in villages and towns, because we want to control our destiny. We don't want someone else to control us. And I have the utmost respect for American Water. They've done good things for a lot of people, but also it comes at a cost. So please, and I will give the mayor the documentation that I have. All I could say is we don't have to go quickly. We have to really expand, and the town manager's done a wonderful job, and maybe he should step up more and say, okay, let's do another feasibility study. How much is it going to cost us to build this out, and how much is it going to cost us as a ratepayer, where we get no benefit from the taxes, or as a community where you can raise our taxes, and we could write that off at the end of the year when we do our taxes. So those are the other, things that we need to consider as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
I didn't mean it for that. I just want everybody to be aware.
no, absolutely. And you bring up a couple points, and I can hear the passion in your voice, and I get a little passionate too. There's some things that you said that doesn't relate to our operations in Virginia, and I think it's very important for me to kind of call out some facts that are specific to Virginia. Specifically about
But
rates.
Virginia doesn't have to deal with Cape Charles, because all the expenses that you're going to spend in Cape Charles are going to be stayed in Cape Charles. You're not going to charge that to your other municipalities. Any cost, any infrastructure improvement costs that you put on Cape Charles will stay in Cape Charles. That's not going to go to the state of Virginia.
That's not correct. And that's what I'm saying about facts. In Virginia, all of our operations, all of our districts are moving towards what we could call a consolidated rate. So the number that you see, kind of at that 2028 is actually, not even down to our consolidated rate in Virginia. So our average water bill varies right now amongst the districts because we're 1/3 consolidated. We will eventually be fully consolidated. So in Alexandria, to answer your question, the average water bill, and keep in mind, the first slide.
What's the population of Alexandria?
The population in Alexandria is 340,000 people.
That's a
the
large
population.
municipality.
But the average water bill there is in the low 20s. In Hopewell, as an example, 10,000 customers, a little smaller. The average water bill there is also low to mid 20s. Del City is the same. Now we do have the Eastern District, which is communities not quite like Cape Charles, but they're small well community systems. Their water bills are higher because they're based on the charges where you
That's
those
what I'm saying.
scalabilities.
Yes.
But JR's customers' bills right now, they're going down to our consolidated rate. So the fact, to say that the expenses borne in Cape Charles will stay in Cape Charles, that's not true. And that's the benefit that we bring to a town like Cape Charles.
Are you willing to put that in writing? And are you willing to say that our rate is going to be a mutually exclusive rate with everyone else in Virginia? Or are we going to be stuck here with, because we're giving up a lot to go to American Water. We're giving up our tax benefits.
Yep, so the two things. One,
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
You seem pretty smart. Explain to us again how this tax thing works. This is the first I've heard of it. So go ahead and stand up with the mic. Sure. So everybody can hear you. I want some tax.
Let me tell you I'll tell you a little bit about my background. And I'm here to help.
Yeah, I know
Okay,
you are.
I'm not
being
here,
smart. I don't
I'm not
understand.
here
I've
to
never heard
place
of it.
blame, I'm not here, we need to work together. Okay,
But
because
can you
right
explain
now,
to me how we get tax credit?
right now, you have control as a board, okay, to do the improvements. You can bond for it at a much cheaper rate than American Water can because you're a municipality. It's a tax-free, okay? So those improvements could be made. All right, and I suggest that you really look at it as a board to keep it in-house. Because even if it would cost us more money, at the end of the year, we get to write that off. That's a gift to us.
How? Who?
When-
You get to write it off personally?
Yeah, doesn't the government give all of us a $10,000 tax?
It's an enterprise fund. It's
Excuse me?
basically- It's an enterprise fund. It's basically controlled by the rates. We don't use tax revenue to generate anything in this.
No, but you can use,
Zero.
the benefit of the infrastructure and put that onto your tax rolls.
No, you can't.
No,
Why
you
not?
can't. No.
That's New York, that's not
Excuse
here.
me, Bob, we explain how,
Yeah, is there someone that could explain it?
yeah.
Microphone.
Bonding for wastewater and the debt service for wastewater and water improvements goes into the rate. It does not go into the general fund and get reflected in a real estate tax rate. It has nothing to do with taxes. So the employees and everything. Correct. It's like a mini company. As the town, it is a department within the municipality. It operates as an enterprise fund, and all the costs, including the interest on the bonds, is in the rate you pay. It is not in your real estate taxes. It is not deductible. That's no.
No,
Not if it operates as an enterprise fund. That would be a subsidy to the enterprise fund. Operated as an enterprise. We do now. I'm saying, could we change it? Why would you do that? To get the tax benefit. Well, now you're talking about a policy change, and that's not what we're here to talk about.
That's for a different meeting, so who's next?
We're also a Dillon state, we can't supersede what Virginia law is either.
Yeah, thank you. And I understand your question much more now. And what Bob said is correct. Our status quo operates exactly how the town does now. An enterprise fund is also called a business type activity of the government. all costs of that activity are accounted for separately and paid for separately. So the general taxes charged by the town, none of those revenues can be used to support the water and wastewater system. The rates alone and the connection fees and the miscellaneous fees of water users is what pays for the water and wastewater enterprise fund. So you are correct, there are communities that opt to support utilities with general tax revenues. However, firms like us and best practices for municipal government is to segregate those costs. I'm getting some feedback here. Segregate those costs for ratepayers only, so that the people that use the service are the ones that pay for the service. And somebody who may be on the tax roll without a water meter is not paying for those services.
There's also financing implications at times. We don't currently have any with our current financing, but sometimes certain grants or government programs require an enterprise fund so that they know the money's going to this function. And we are required, we audit our budget every year as an enterprise fund. So we track all of those activities stay within the utility fund, which is all just water and sewer. And you can track it uniquely. That's why the whole argument here is it all comes down to the rate base. You know, you got fixed expenses. Okay, the more people you can divide that in, the lower the rates are, right? So what Virginia American Water can bring to us is they can move us into the consolidated rate so that our costs get blended with everybody else's, but it's paid for by hundreds of thousands of ratepayers, and it comes down. Now, you ask for a guarantee. You can't make a guarantee because nobody in this room controls it. The SCC controls it. Only the SCC can set the rates for a private utility company. They can make a rate case. We can put it in our agreement that they will make a rate case to do certain things, but ultimately, the State Corporation Commission is the only one who can approve the rates and set the rates. However, it is the role of the SCC to look out for the ratepayer, not the company, not the town, the ratepayer. So it would be extraordinary that they would turn that down. If the end result is that everyone's rates go down, it would be extraordinary for the SCC to turn that down. So that's why it's in our best interest to at least look at this. This has the ability to have the three big things in my mind that I'm looking at here is professional expertise, which the town does not have right now. I mentioned we have a hard time with compliance. Our water quality, it's safe water, but no one seems to like the taste. I mean, it's just, we have water quality issues. Let me finish my comments, sir, please. So we have we have the compliance issues. We have the need to make capital investments that are either cash, either we pay cash for it or we have to take out debt for it. And then all of those costs have to be spread over a set rate base. There's been comment that that our cost of capital is cheaper than a private company, and that may be true. But even taking that into consideration, when you take that service and spread it over a larger group, the end result is lower cost for the ratepayer. So you can't just look at one component. You can't just look at cost of capital and say that that's the reason. You can't just look at these things as one-offs. You have to look at them all together and tally them up, and what's the bottom line? The bottom line, as you see up there, is that if we keep the system, rates are going up. I'll guarantee rates are going up if we keep the system. If someone like Virginia American Water takes it, it's very likely that rates will at least stay the same, probably go down. And they have the capital to bring to do the investments when they're needed, so that things don't get deferred and costs go higher than they would be. That's what happens with municipalities, is sometimes we don't have the cash, we defer the activity, and we wind up costing us more in the long run, right? But that problem is somewhat alleviated because they have the cash to be able to, the capital, to make the investments when needed. And we can build that into the comprehensive agreement when we sit down and negotiate these things. They've pledged $10 million, but there's no detail to that yet. We need to work through that. So,
On the bottom line is the rate. Okay, the bottom line here across the board, and that's what I'm concerned. I'm not going to speak for everyone else. But the bottom line for me is the rate and the control of the rate. Okay, if there's certain guarantees that can be offered by American Water, that we would know that 20 years from now there would be a small percentage increase, because we're already seeing, they're saying we're going to save money from day one. Okay, those
People
the
are
things
watching
that-
online, which is why we have the microphones.
Yeah, I
There are
think
a lot
it's
of
over
people
there.
watching online.
Oh, I'm sorry.
who
And
had,
that's why we need the microphone if you're going to ask a question, but there are people who have paired up.
Yeah.
I'm saying the bottom line for all of us is the rate. If we can get guarantees and assurances from American Water that the rate is going to be similar to this chart for a longer period of time, because, you know, one resident here talked about what happens after year 10. You know, and that's what we need to know.
Yeah, so I've got, you know, a few other, I think, important points to make out, to get right to your point.
Mr. Wendell's next after that.
in-
Mr. Wendell had something to say, so.
In Virginia, the consolidation of rates is actually embedded into state law, you know, so it's a requirement. You know, it's kind of unique to the state of Virginia because you don't see that, you know, perhaps in New York. So, you know, these projections, John is absolutely correct. We cannot guarantee things like timing and specificity around what those rates are going to look like at certain steps, but there is absolutely a guarantee that there will be consolidation. So, you know, rates will go down, the timing of which, you know, is kind of up to the air, and it's up to the SEC to kind of weigh in on that. That in and of itself, you know, gives a guarantee and should give assurance to the town of Cape Charles residents about, you know, the impact on rates.
Sorry, can I interrupt and just reiterate one thing that John said that it seems not everybody heard? You know, we were encouraged for the council to look at the option of maintaining it. Well, I thought John had made it clear. This is the process we have to go through because we got this offer on the table. Only after we see if we can develop an agreement do we decide whether or not to sell the utility. So, I mean, obviously we are looking at the option of keeping it, and John discussed that there would probably be the need for contracting management, and that's how we calculate the yellow line. So again, that's the process. We have not made a decision. We're soliciting input from the public to inform our discussions moving forward.
Hello there. Frank Wendell, 515 Monroe Avenue. Mr. Falmer, you're the second person up here who's had to explain the process. If this is such an important subject, and I agree that it is, why wasn't the process part of the handout? Why do you have to reiterate what the process is? Isn't it part of serving the public to give us the educational handouts so we know what the process is instead of waiting for attempted explanation? Also, in that is Manager Posey said, well, you know, clarified what the next steps were verbally. Again, you guys got staff, you got copying machines, you got the ability to print this, could have been done, should have been done.
It's already gone out to you in the public messages,
Yeah.
the PPA.
Well, it's not at the, it's not here to hand out, because, okay. All right. We agreed, it's not here now, it's not something, American Water has their handouts, but not the processes of our local government to be handed out, okay. I'm curious about the expansion of services, what this does. It takes our, I think it's been discussed admirably about the different ramifications of losing control, but there's been, from what I've heard, there's little discussion on who calls the shots when it gets expanded. If you privatize this,
Do they make their own agreements? You mentioned in coordination with Cape Charles, but what power would Cape Charles have if you wanted to expand to an area where a developer wanted to put a strip mall that's going to compete with a lot of our independent restaurants and boutiques in town, and maybe the council took some heat and decided, well, we hope you don't do that. You're going to go where you turn your dollars. What weight would their opinion have at that point?
Yeah, so I'll answer that, John, and then I'll toss it over to you. So, as a regulated water utility, and all water utilities in the state of Virginia, actually, we require a couple of things. One thing would be a franchise agreement with the town, which would cover things like expansion that, is to be negotiated. The other thing is...
Hold it. A franchise agreement, I know a little bit about them, but anyway, how would that function? What's the mechanisms within that protects the taxpayers?
But the other thing is, in order to operate, we have to obtain a certificate of need and necessity from the state, which essentially creates boundaries. So for us to be able to expand outside of that boundary of the town of Cape Charles, there would need to be support and then also an application process to get that
Support
expanded.
from whom? The guy who wants to develop a strip mall?
It would be all key stakeholders. I mean, it's something that the town can intervene in or support, but there is a process to control that.
The town would intervene in what fashion?
If, just hypothetical, and again, if it was growth that competed with the best interests of the town and the town of Cape Charles opposed it, they could stand against it and most likely deny that certificate of need and necessity.
Who would be denied the certificate?
It would be our company, Virginia American Water.
So if the town didn't want you to do something...
No, I think he's saying who gives the certificate of need and necessity.
Oh, it's the state of Virginia.
Oh,
the SEC.
okay. You say your company provides the professional expertise. Well, what is going on day to day? If we need professional expertise, don't we have a certain level of that, right? Isn't that required by the state?
Yeah, so there's different levels of expertise that go into running water and wastewater systems, and I've personally.
And are we operating with the proper level of expertise currently? When I just drank some water.
I'm going to say this
from the spigot.
I'm going to say this. I've met with many of the town employees, and I can't say better things about the town employees of folks who your water treatment operators, your wastewater treatment operators, your distribution folks. They do have a level of expertise to maintain compliance in operating the water and wastewater systems. I think the expertise, broadly that has been discussed is, engineering expertise, design expertise, expertise, kind of found in the role of consultants.
But wouldn't you contract that out? Why would you need to sell your whole system to have access to that kind of expertise? It's on an as-needed basis, isn't it? That's not an ongoing thing.
No, it's an ongoing thing. We have had.
Well, then let's contract some of it.
And that's what the yellow line shows. The yellow line shows us
the
contracting
yellow line
it out.
shows that, okay.
That's why the yellow line goes up. It's because we have to contract that expertise out.
Mr. Wonder, will you hand the guy in the back the microphone, please?
Yes.
It's me. You wouldn't have given it to me. Hi, Gary McKinney. A couple things I'd like to say. I'd like to hear more about this consolidated approach. But before that, I'd like to say John Hosey put some really well done information out in the form of these bulletins, had links to all this information. I know some of us may not have computers. I think most of us do. Shame on us for not reading that information, for not going to those links. It had what the folks over here had put out. It had what American Water has put out. A lot of these questions were answered already by Mr. Hosey. So for that, I just want to say thanks. I appreciate that kind of information, and it just it helps to read about it. But what I didn't read about, a couple things. The first is this consolidation. I just had no idea that our capital investments could be spread over a much larger base. To me, that is a big, big deal. I'd like to hear more about how that happens. Is that an SCC approved thing? Is it from day one? Is all the other municipalities that you own or manage, are they in it now? I mean, to me, that's huge. I think we need to talk more about that because that's what's going to control our rates.
I can tell you one thing, knowing this, just being a business owner in the county, not in the town, not in the county. I'm speaking in the mic. All right, I mean, I can speak pretty loud, but when I did my power, the power distribution is treated almost the exact same way the water is. They take money out of your bill every month and put it towards capital expenditures. It goes through the entire process. So when someone goes to hook up, a new home goes to hook up, their hookup fees are relatively inexpensive because it's spread throughout the entire network. A&E EC has a big fund that goes out and hooks up these things just because they have a fund for it. I'm assuming the water company has the exact same thing. They do it just to spread out their load throughout the entire system. That's how it works. And
I understand that, but my point is do we have to qualify for that some way, or are we just immediately in this consolidated package / process of all of your other customers? That was the first thing. The second thing I would like to hear a little bit more about is this annexation agreement. I tried to find some additional information on that, and what I understood, which is probably wrong, but the owners of Bay Creek had agreed to pay for any capital expenditures to allow the system to satisfy additional customers. And again, that may not be a big deal. I noticed we only waited at, I think, a 0.5 on your assumptions. But I just wonder, what is that really worth to the town? Is there a plan to negotiate? I mean, I just don't want us to be giving up something that someone committed to, and they've gotten the benefit up to this point, and they need to hold true to their commitment, if that makes sense, even if that's pushed over to the new owners of the systems.
Correct. Let me start with let me answer the second question first.
Okay.
Just because that's what's on everyone's mind. So yes, the annexation agreement is a complex thing that most people aren't very familiar with. You're correct. You're mostly correct. The original owners and successive owners of Bay Creek have a commitment to the town in this annexation agreement to help fund expansion of the plants, and only the expansion of the plants once the plants reach its design capacity. Okay, so once we reach the capacity, then they come in and provide some capital to help expand the plants. The annexation agreement is poorly worded. There is no dollar amount in there. Okay, so it's a liability on the developer that currently is with the town. So I've already put Preserve Communities on notice that should this opportunity move forward, and should we get to the point of sitting down and negotiating agreement, it would actually be a three-party agreement. It would be between the company, the town, and Preserve Communities, because we have to transfer that liability from the current agreement to the new one. We don't know how that's going to happen yet, what the details are on that. That's a point to be negotiated. So yes, we're aware of it, and yes, that's something that we will address going forward. Regarding the consolidated rates, as Casey mentioned earlier, I think you said a third of your users are currently on the consolidated rate, and they're moving to get them all on there. What we would be, again, this is a point of negotiation between us when we get there, is they have made a commitment in their proposal to keep our rates steady. They wouldn't go up for some period of time until we can make a case to the SCC to bring us in line, to start bringing us in line with the consolidated rate. Now, the timing on all that needs to be worked out, and the one who's in control of that is the SCC, not us or Virginia Water.
So they have the final say on moving us into this consolidated
The SCC
program.
does, yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what wasn't clear to me.
I'd say, Mr. Hosey, if you can explain Hampton Road Sanitation District we had explored, they operate under the same premise. If you could just give the boundaries on that and its consolidated system.
So we had gotten a question about whether or not the Hampton Road Sanitation District was an option for us. So I met with the new executive director of Hampton Road Sanitation District. A couple of things. First, they only deal in wastewater, so they wouldn't help us with our water. We would have to figure out something else with our water. They would only deal with wastewater. Second, they are prohibited from taking on debt service. So we would have to retain our debt. We would be turning it over to them, but we would retain our debt unless we could get grants. Now, Hancock was able to do that. They were able to find grants through DEQ to help pay off their debt. But there's no guarantees that we would be able to do that. Also, they would not be able to pay for the equity that's currently in the system right now. I mean, the system has equity. We've been paying debt service on it for a long time. There were grants initially when it was constructed. So there is some equity. We would be leaving that on the table. So it wouldn't take care of our water. We could retain our debt, and we would have to give up our equity. What we would get, and this is no small thing, is we would get that expertise that we need. We would get someone who knows what they're doing to run our system. And their rates are lower than our rates for sewer. So we could see a reduction in our rates as a result of that. However, their rates compared to Virginia Water's consolidated rate is higher. So we could potentially get lower rates with Virginia Water than going with HRSD. And we don't have to retain our debt, and we don't have to leave the equity on the table. So that's kind of, so basically what the director told me is that he was very candid and said they can't compete with this proposal.
Sorry, the lady. Yes, okay, all right.
My name is Martin Mayer. I live at 428 Plum Street. Just echoing Gary's comments, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity and the effort to disseminate some of this information. I'm going to give Casey a little bit of a break here, and I wanted to go back to the decision-making matrix. So I'm looking at the decision-making matrix here. I'm struggling. There's very, very minimal discussion about how you put this together, the weighting, talking. No methodological discussion. I see nothing on the rigor. When I'm looking at the bullet points, I see 2 to 3 sentences per bullet point. I'd like to hear a lot more on that, and that also kind of brought me back to this thing that's been going on for decades now, the Annexation Agreement. And seeing the weighting assigned to that, and I can't help but think about what Gary just said and what several others have said, there should be a number assigned to that right now. My concern being that if this does continue, if this goes through down the line, if Virginia American Water owns that, do they get bailed out from preserved communities, essentially? Does that make sense? Does that track?
Yes, yeah, you have sort of 2 questions, more detail, obviously, and then the annexation, and I'll let John handle some of that, although I can comment on what this is showing. So we did provide a little bit more detail in the material that's on the website, that's linked, and we can provide that to you if you'd like. It's more sentences than bullet points on our decisions, but I can go through some of them now. So this decision matrix went through several iterations. First, we provided one to council that was strictly our evaluation of the information we had. We were provided the financial data of the town, we were provided the proposals, and we looked at all of them and said, at face value, what do we think? We brought that to council, and we talked to them about it. And they gave us their input on the weighting, on what information went into, which I'll go into in a second, and we sort of generated another iteration. And then we met with the proposers to ask questions about our assumptions and some of the holes in our information, and we further revised it. So this is a sort of evolutionary process where we arrived at this. Now, I understand this is very basic, and it's just showing arrows. There was the discussions on things like customer affordability and rate stability is pretty straightforward. Under which scenario are rates higher, the same, or lower? And we ranked and scored these proposals based on that information. I think that's pretty understandable. need for professional expertise has been talked about several times tonight. The question was, under these ownership proposals, existing and new, which offers the best approach to the acquiring and retaining of professional experience? And that's why the ranking is more positive for the proposal. I think they've discussed that.
I mean, I understand why one is higher than the other, but what does 1.6 mean? What does 1.4 mean? Well, you know, specifically the weighting.
The weighting was essentially if, for instance, there were scores associated with this, and we got into a good level of detail to say, if we scored this a certain way and we multiplied that by a weighting. So for instance, if something scored very well on a lot of lower weighted things and very poorly on highly weighted things, there was a balance.
So you assign a metric to this and you use a scale of 0 to 5 and something along, is that?
Correct. And the weightings were not developed by us. They were in coordination with council and staff on what matters most. So if we had a proposal that did a very good job at things that don't matter, that would not hold as much weight as one that did a few things that matter a whole lot and did a very good job on those.
Do we have that scale? Do we have access to that scale to see what the weighted priorities are?
Well, the weighted priorities are there. The scoring would result.
Well, that is simply showing that these things scored higher. That's not showing that they're weighted higher. Is that?
They are. Each of these are weighted the same. Okay. So the weighting for customer affordability is the same for both proposals. So for instance, if one was a 0 and one was a 5, they would be weighted the same. The importance of the criteria is what the weighting is, not necessarily the score.
So
of the proposal.
it's not a true weight, that it's a rank, essentially.
You can think of it as a rank. The higher the weighting, the ranked higher that criteria. It's more important to the overall score. Right.
I'm sorry, with your ranking or excuse me, with your weighting, you've got 1.6 to 1, I believe. It varies in between that.
0.2. There are decimals
okay,
there.
I'm sorry, I can't apologize.
They total to the
I can't
1.4.
okay.
So,
but anyway, okay. Is that 1.6 the top? I believe it's 1.6 the top one. Is that out of a possible 5? Are all of them out of a possible 5? Or each one of them different?
That is how weighted they are compared to the other. So for instance, if one of the proposals scored a 5, we would take that 5 and multiply it by 1.6, and that was the score. If it scored 5 on net cash flow, then it would be 5 times 1, which would result in a lower weighted score, even though they were both 5, right? So it's saying, how important is this characteristic to our decision? And again, it didn't come from us, it came from discussions with staff and council. So it's a way of equalizing how we are looking at these proposals. If I give both of these proposals perfect marks in a category, but that category is not typically terribly important, for instance, the net cash flow, then it doesn't weight very heavily on our decision. It still weights on the decision, but not as heavily as the higher weighting, the customer affordability and rate stability.
Oh, thank you. I have one more question for you about the projection for the cost to operate the plant if the town retains ownership. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you, first of all, can summarize some of the key items that were included there, because I think I heard John Tahosey say that there were capital expenditures and maybe some debt. Can you kind of characterize it for us?
Sure. I'm going to finish your answer very briefly, and then I'll address that. I want to be clear. The ranking for the assumptions is not what is that assumption. It is how confident we are in that assumption. So the Annexation Agreement is a perfect example. We know more about how that would work under the town's ownership. We know less about how that would work under this agreement. That's to be determined. We are not terribly confident comparing the two of where we stand on that.
And that's my concern, because I feel like from a private entity, there is substantial motivation to come. That's going to mitigate future expansion costs for them. So there should be a dollar figure attached to that.
I think everyone would agree, but that's a...
Marty, you saying a dollar figure attached to the annexation liability?
Yes.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. So our confidence in those assumptions is not particularly high for either case, but it is at least a more well-known quantity under the given.
I mean, it's not that it's in public record now.
Mhm.
They are putting in an offer for the utilities, correct?
You're talking about the value of the liability in the annexation agreement?
Exactly.
There is no dollar amount.
I understand that.
Anywhere.
I understand
In or
that.
out of public domain.
But it would be an asset for them as the private company coming in if that mitigates expansion costs down
Correct.
the line.
No, you're right, and that's why that's part of the negotiation. So with that, and we have to have preserved communities
That
at the table.
hasn't come up yet.
Right, so
Okay.
that's part, and that, all I'm commenting is that I agree that that is a point of value that needs to be incorporated into the final agreement. And you'll get to see that final agreement before this group says yes or no.
So, again, there's more detail on, and I'll go through a couple more of these. The reputation track record one we've talked about a little bit. It's related to the need for professional expertise. It's, you know, our estimation, given our experience and the information we've been provided by the town, of looking forward, which of these scenarios provides a better level of service overall in terms of operating the systems, complying with federal and state environmental regulations, things like that. You know, how good does the picture look in their ability to do that? Customer service, we talked about several times. You know, our main question was, what would the ratepayers feel in our experience? And we've been through a lot of these transactions, and the things we're hearing consistently, a more personal level of customer service. Not to say that theirs is impersonal, but it's again going back to the local versus a more widespread approach to a lot of these issues. That is a key issue that we looked at, and again, we've heard it before. The net cash flow is again pretty straightforward. One of these scenarios generates cash flow to the town, and one does not. I mean, that's a pretty clear point of this whole process. That was our estimation of, you know, what that impact is and how we should rank it. I'm going to go to, I'm sorry, yep, back here, to address your question relative to the numbers and the assumptions in our forecasts. So there are a couple of key drivers to that yellow line. What we started with was the existing budget, which is public information. You can look up the water and wastewater budgets of the town. We also took the planned capital improvement, which I believe is also available it's a plan. You know, these are forward-looking, what needs to be invested in the system. We added to it cost escalations because costs go up. We were actually very modest in our escalation of costs, 2% a year. I think everybody would be very happy if costs were only going up 2% a year. We're trying to be conservative in that regard. We also added the level of professional expertise to the cost of the existing town. So that is an additional level of expense for the system as it is. The line increasing is primarily due to capital, to the capital investments of the system. It was mentioned before about deferring capital. You know, a municipality wants and needs to invest in their system. Oftentimes, for various reasons, it just is not feasible to spread the costs over a smaller system. We work with systems. I think my smallest municipal client is the town of Middleburg, which is about 450 connections. They have to replace a water line. It costs them the same $1 million as it does Virginia American. So that is a key issue driving that yellow line. We have millions of dollars of costs in capital, increasing operations costs, and increasing existing costs that we're paying on a day-to-day basis. We've discussed the consolidated rate, and I won't discuss that. Again, this is based on the information we were provided. But the driver of that yellow line is simply, you have a system that requires an immense amount of money to run, and these costs are generally fixed. And your customer base, although we are estimating slight expansion in that customer base, the customer base is also largely fixed.
Is that report available to the public?
Which report?
The report that has a detail on the basis for your estimates here?
we can provide the pro formas that generate these rates and the.
I think pretty much everything is in this document that was linked to that. That has pretty much
No, it's
everything.
not.
We can be
No,
more
it's not.
specific about some of the assumptions and the dollars amount that again, it's the existing budget and it's an estimated future capital. Again, these forecasts are, we had your point about looking farther forward. Even these forecasts in these out years are fuzzy. Right?
I
We don't-
understand, but I'm a water and wastewater consultant, and I work with Fortune 500 manufacturing companies, et cetera, and they do this.
Mhm.
All right, so I'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah, I want to say a couple things. I don't want everybody to be narrow-minded, because we're really saying plants, plants, plants. It's really not just the plants. As my wonderful vice mayor here has said ever since he's been on council, there's a lot of I&I issues. There's a lot of issues going on underneath the town that needs to be corrected. It's going to cost millions, and grant funds is not always there. So these are things that we're looking at too. I mean, it ain't just the plants. I just want everybody to be clear about that. This is the whole enchilada, it's the whole system. So it's more to it than just the plants. And I want, Bob, Mr. Panic, I'm gonna put you on the spot for a second. I don't even know if you can answer these questions. But I remember very clearly when we built this plant. And I remember our rates, and I remember I sat in a lot of meetings. Can you kind of give us a brief, if you remember, what our rates jumped when we built this plant?
Sure. Well, prior to, on the wastewater side, prior to the building of the new plant, the rate was down somewhere around $30 a month. And it more than doubled. And we were lucky that it only doubled because a $20 million plant was built with $15 million of grants, so we only had to borrow $5 million. So it was a big shock, a big rate shock, and we have been able to hold that rate steady for about 10 years now, about $1 variation here and there, simply by constraining costs and by an increasing customer base. But we're at the end of the rope. As the mayor said, there's a lot more to the systems than the plants. We have 4 pump stations. I'll talk about it on the wastewater side. We have 4 pump stations in the gravity collection system in the old town, only one of which has been comprehensively refurbished, and that was 12 years ago. I'm not going to try to scare you away, okay? We have 3 vacuum pump stations in Bay Creek. By the time 2031 comes around, they're going to be 30 years old. The water tower, by the time 2031 comes around, will be 40 years old. The last time it was built in '93. Oh yeah, before Bay Creek. Just to give you a sense of scale, the mayor talked about millions of dollars. When we refurbished the main pump station, the Mason Avenue pump station, around 2010, and it did include a new force main, it was over $1.3 million, $1.4 million, and that was in 2010. So that gives you an idea.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, Town Manager Posey, you had made reference to the Nancock system and retiring some of their debt. They were lucky enough to get a grant to retire some of their infrastructure or associated costs. Is the town currently looking for such grants? Do we
No.
have applications in for any?
No,
Have we had any in since you were hired?
no.
Why not?
that grant was specific, the grant that Nancock got was specifically tied to the acquisition with Hampton Roads Sanitation District. So unless.
Do they have to be specifically tied to
Those-
Hampton Roads?
Those were.
Do the grants that we would need to help retire some of our debt have to be tied to anything?
I have no idea,
Why not?
because I just don't know.
Why not?
Because I'm an idiot. I don't know. I just don't know.
Okay, let's, oh my, another question you made reference, and I guess I'm a little confused about the, as everybody is, a clarification on annexation agreement. Earlier in your presentation, it was said that American Water would assume the language and with the annexation agreement. You described it, even though it didn't have a dollar amount, you described it as a liability, that they would be assuming that liability.
No.
You didn't say I wrote that down.
No.
How would you describe it now?
No,
then?
no, I said Preserved Communities has a liability. That liability would have to survive an agreement.
What would their liability be in regard to the annexation agreement?
I don't know. There is no dollar amount yet. That's a negotiating
But
point.
it triggers the expensive expansion that has to be, runs with the developer. So that's their liability.
The developer's liability, yes.
But not, okay, so American Water would assume that liability.
No. American Water would be the beneficiary of that liability.
Beneficiary of liability, which turns it into an asset, does it
Correct.
not?
Correct.
Then why you described it as a liability?
I didn't. You're twisting my words. I said the liability is with the developer.
You use the word liability.
Yes. Because that's the correct way of using the word.
Preserve has a liability with the town. So if we go through this transaction, basically, that's an asset for negotiation with American Water.
But still a liability for the developer,
Correct.
which is very great.
But in a nutshell, it's an asset for us during the negotiation.
Okay. Well, why didn't we just look at it as an asset going forward that we're going to be able to utilize at some point?
That's exactly what we're doing.
We, in the yellow line, assumes that that asset remains with the town and that the developer makes a contribution to the expansion of the system that is not reflected in the town's rates. It is assumed to be a cash asset at the time of expansion for the town. I'm sorry. Yep.
Eric, have you done an analysis of all the other municipalities that deal with American Water in Virginia and what their rates actually were intended to be and what they are now?
We did some due diligence related to rates and rate cases previously. It's difficult.
In this study?
During
this
the preliminary
study?
investigation of both proposals.
Can you share that with the public?
Well, I was going to say, it's difficult to piece that together. The public information available in terms of proposals, what proposals were versus what actual. Certainly the rate cases are public. They're state corporation rate cases.
Right.
So we can see what the rates are, as in what the rates were proposed to be. It's very rare that specific rates are negotiated and proposed because they are subject to so many different things and approvals.
Okay, so American Water's been around, what'd you say, I'm sorry, how many years? In Virginia? Since the 50s. Oh, well, we're not going to go back that far. But let's say we take a 10 or 20-year period of some of the municipalities that were just mentioned here and see how that generated over that time frame to see what will happen to Cape Charles.
Well, two things. We can certainly see what their rates have been, their approved rates for that time frame.
Well, what it was year to year. And I don't want to know what approved. I want to know, we started at $1 and we're at $5 now. You know, that's what I'd like to see.
Sure. So the specific rates that were effective are certainly available in public information.
Right.
As that relates to this plan, the relationship between those historical rate cases and the future rate cases is something that we would not be able to link directly to say, oh, past performance and future results, so to speak. So certainly the history
but it gives
is
us a benchmark.
But
It gives
here-
us some kind of benchmark to go forward.
But it's not that simple, because what drives rates is capital investment. So you can't just compare rates. You'd also have to look at the capital investment that was made in those municipalities. Oftentimes, what happens, as I mentioned earlier, is when a municipality owns a utility, they don't take care of it, and they tend to defer maintenance, and they don't invest in
I'm
it.
not talking about a
But-
municipality, John. I'm talking about American Water when they've
I'm not-
taken over.
Let me finish.
No, let me finish. When they've taken over a municipality
Sir,
over
sir.
time.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I'll get
Let
there.
him speak, and then you can speak, and then he can speak. We're not going to have speaking over top of each other.
Okay.
So in a situation where a community did not make the investments necessary to maintain their system, and then a private company comes in and takes it, okay, and that company then makes the investments necessary to bring it up to speed, then yes, the rates are going to go up because they made an investment. So you can't just compare the fact that, well, the rates were here and now they're here. You have to look at what happened in the intervening time.
Okay, but you're saying right now with these rates that they're going to make this major investment that the mayor just put out there. They're making major investments in pump houses, in the facilities, and our rates are actually going to go down.
That's right, because they're going to spread those costs out over hundreds of thousands of users instead of the 1,000 users that are here.
Okay, so I'd like to see that. If they're doing that currently in the state of Virginia, I'd like to see it in the other municipalities where they're spreading out the cost over the hundreds of thousands of users and see what the rate is done year to year over a 10-year period.
John, that's something we can provide to you. You know, off the top of my head, you know, on average, you got to keep in mind with consolidation. Yeah, keep in mind with consolidation, you know, some are actually going down, so it's not always going to reflect an increase, but on average over the last, 10 years or so, it's about a 2 to 3% increase, year over year, keeping up on par with inflation. And that does reflect, to John's point, a significant amount of capital investment. Christina, on a year-to-year basis right now is what, $40–50 million that we invest in our systems in Virginia, and still, do that at that 3% year over year range.
Well, compounded now, the fixtures the figures that are here, compounded with inflation. I mean, if we go from, let's say, $100 to $130 over 10 years, that's just the rate of inflation compounded. So if you're saying that you're going to do the same thing, and those rates are not going to be lower, then we're on par with keeping the facility or going with you.
No, that's not compounded inflation. That's compounded inflation plus all the capital investment we would have to make, plus contract management, plus.
But that's all supposedly in there.
Right. But you
Right,
made it.
so you're.
But they don't have those costs. We do. 'Cause
Well, he's going to have those costs because he has to do that.
But he's already got that. The expertise is
Sir,
already
are you
here.
going to upgrade the facilities when you come in here?
We absolutely are, yep.
So there we are. It's there.
And that is reflected in our rates going down. I
That's
think
what
to
I'm
get to your
saying.
point, that investment of $10 million is reflective in that rate going down.
Okay.
Based on my assumption on the electrical versus the water utility, you guys have a small fee?
You can pass that back up and stick it.
A small fee in there you collect for upgrades throughout the year? Like, I know the electric company puts $1 or $2 in there for line services. I mean, I don't know, do you guys?
They have connection fees. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, we do have connection fees. If you hook up to our servicer, they do range anywhere from $900 to, I don't know. Yeah, our wastewater systems are $2,000, but, those are collected for expansions, yes.
Hi, AJ Ewell, another native. Traditionally, people think that wells are best and surface water is contaminated, but we see chlorofluorocarbons and, what'd you say, disinfection byproducts. Some people have given thought to desalination, and that would be very expensive because it's energy intensive. But if you could get the heat process, instead of the loss from conversion of electricity, that would be a benefit down the road, I think. If you could use a small appropriately sized lifter, liquid fluoride thorium reactor. They're not from the bomb industry, you know, so there's no pressure, there's no water, there's consumption of waste that's available rather than production. So that might be something to look at down the road, and literally down the road. But I don't know, are you foreseeing any local employment increase, hiring, you know, of local people?
Yeah. So, currently, our commitment to the town and to the town's employees is to retain all the current employees, so long as they can pass drug and, alcohol tests, that sort of thing. We generally would like to be in the community to see how the operations run and make a determination on if more resources are needed, at that time. I do understand that the town, has some vacancies that may or may not come up if somebody chose not to come with our company as an example, and we would fill those vacancies. So there would not be a reduction of headcount.
Well, I have two resumes. One's blue and one's gray. So, yeah. I worked with the town of Charlottesville in utility and roads, land surveying. So, yeah, I might be available.
Excuse me. Hi, Jim Outland, 213 Madison Avenue. Casey, first for you and your team, how do you all define success when you come into like Waverly? Do you have key performance indicators? Do you negotiate that with the town?
Yeah, and that's a very expansive topic. There's a lot of ways we define success. Most importantly, we look at the safety and health of water, right? Making sure that we're meeting compliance, that water is safe, reliable for customers. That's the number one business. On the wastewater side, the same is true for the environment, right? Making sure that the water that we discharge back into the environment is safe going into the environment. We also look at customer satisfaction as something that we pay, very closely to make sure that customers are happy with the way that we're doing work. If there are issues that are raised to the town or to us, we try to work very quickly to get those resolved. Little things like paving, right? If we dig a hole in the front of your yard on the road, make sure that we get those things taken care of quickly. Accuracy of bills, and then of course, the rates that go into bills, we want to make sure that we're keeping a track of affordability. Capital investments, planning, making sure that assets remain reliable. Christina and her team and my team, every year we go through a process that reviews all of our critical assets in every one of our systems and looks at the risk that is involved with those assets and ensure that our capital planning reflects addressing and mitigating the risks as much as we can. Everything we do is mechanical, so it's all subject to failure, but we can get a lot of that risk out through capital investments. We look at employee satisfaction. Every year, we give a survey to our employees. Tell us your feedback. What do you like about the company? What do you not? What are some of the things that we can do to help make your jobs easier and more efficient and also make, your employment more enjoyable? We meet regularly with key stakeholders in the community, make sure that the towns are happy. There's all sorts of metrics, safety of employees.
That's where we get to the, the ongoing efficiency that you talked about with your team. When you consult if the council gave the go-ahead to John to begin negotiation, do you talk to him about, what key performance indicators John would build into an agreement and how you measure success of that, or is it just gone once the deal is done?
So we haven't finalized our role in a negotiation. That's obviously a next step. But we do provide guidance similar to the evaluations here on the specific terms of agreements. You'd also involve a legal team that specializes in PPEA transactions to review that.
Okay.
So the town would have professional advice on the specifics of these types of agreements, the annexation, the capital investment, and things like that.
Right. But it's not going to be like an agreement where annually John gets to review and discuss how it's going to go forward. It's essentially sold, and that's it. We're a stakeholder thereafter with, some sort of stakeholder input, but that's the end of it from there, right?
Correct.
Casey, how is you and your team, I don't know if it's a corporate policy or not, in regards to fluoride in the water? Is that a requirement?
Yep, so our position on fluoride is, that it's a community preference.
Okay,
Yes,
so the community can indicate to y'all whether fluoride is in or out?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take Mr. Wendell, and then after that, it's 8:30. We'll resume here again Saturday.
Yes, thank you. I keep hearing it being reiterated and mentioned, the need for professional expertise. If we were to make the assumption that all the infrastructure was good for the foreseeable future, which is a big assumption, but let's try to do that. And you have a $94.94 rate. If we were to hire the proper expertise, in your opinion, and everything else was good, but we're just lacking in expertise, what would that yearly salary be, and what would it do to that rate? Because I don't understand why we can't advertise and hire and retain that kind of expertise now. But I'll assume that we're having trouble there. So if we were to go out, how much would we have to pay for somebody that is well-versed in running our system?
Obviously, we wouldn't know until we put out an RFP.
Are you in agreement with, could you hear what you said?
Yeah, that's.
I'm a chemical engineer, and for civil engineers, typically $70,000 to $80,000 for a starting salary, and maybe $90,000. But this is a lower cost of living than where I come from.
Yeah, so that's for salary, but the
So how many people do we have on staff making more than that? Do you make more than that, Mr. Hosey?
Yes, I do.
Okay. But you don't have any answers for a lot of these scenarios. You need to hire that. We need professional expertise, right?
My expertise is not in utility management, no.
I wasn't confused about that.
No, you're not.
Okay. All right.
But in the real world, these are mechanical parts and they do break down, so that's a hypothetical question that would never even hold water.
I was just trying to get it hold long enough to get this question out. Is that like, why can't we hire and retain this person? What would it do? Would we have to pay an extra $5 a month per person to get that expertise?
That yellow line incorporates that cost into it. So that's already built in.
Well, it incorporates it, but it doesn't delineate it. So can you somebody take a guess at answering my question?
But your hypothetical question is irrelevant because you're only talking about one piece of the entire.
Oh, no, it's not irrelevant. That's up to the debate. Okay, how much would you have to hire somebody to run our plant that we were satisfied they had the proper expertise? I don't see that being irrelevant. That's the crux of part of the matter here. That's part of the motivation for wanting to go with American.
Just to throw this out here, Frank, we've been trying to hire a planner and a zoning administrator for how long?
Going to talk the whole time I've been here.
Well, how much are you looking to pay the planner?
It's not relevant to this conversation.
Yeah, sure, it's relevant. It comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. Everything's relevant.
It's not this conversation, no.
You just brought up I didn't bring up the planner.
I know, but I'm
Come
just saying,
on.
I just brought it up to use an example.
Okay.
It's hard to get.
So nobody's going to tell me that. If I get close, will you tell me I'm getting hotter or colder?
So we can only offer opinions, Frank, as you're offering your opinion. And in my opinion, we wouldn't be hiring anybody for that. We'd be hiring a firm to provide services.
Okay, well, how much would you guess that would cost?
I can't guess what that is because we don't have a scope of work. We haven't even sat down and codified.
So you're entertaining the idea of selling the whole system, but you haven't developed a scope of work to hire an individual that could run our system, notwithstanding the infrastructure problems.
It's all part of the process, Frank. The cost for that, whatever it is in that yellow line. I don't happen to know the dollar amount. Same way with the Annexation Agreement. It was signed 30 years ago. It was the county, the town, and Brown and Root, and had they put a dollar value to it at that point in time, I'm sure Brown and Root would have jumped all over it, because the technology.
Well, I could
that
tell you why
in
there's,
this
I could
current
tell you
plan-
why there's no dollar amount, but anyway, that's for another time, I'm sure. I signed that annexation agreement, by the way, in case anybody wants to know. But anyway, I find,
Put a dollar amount.
but I do find the lack of answers here disturbing from the local government.
I do want to chime in really quick. You know, I want to put a sense of my appreciation for, you know, the amount of knowledge and expertise that goes into running a water and wastewater, you know, facility. I've been in the water business since I got out of high school. You know, started at the bottom and up, and I know nowhere near the amount of knowledge that it takes for the full operations of a water system, right? I'm operations. I got Christina here. She's engineering. We got finance. We got Dr. Christian Volk over there for water quality. Also on our staff, SCADA expertise, which is, you know, very intensive with water and wastewater systems. You know, it's my opinion that you're not going to find one person, right, to solve the needs. It's a variety of different resources that are going to have to come together with. And even as strong as our team is in Virginia, with Virginia American Water, there are times that we have to reach out and leverage the expertise of our broader company. I mean, whether it's a specific algae issue that our plants are facing, or whether there's a specific, you know, project that is something that we've not seen before. You know, those resources, the knowledge, the expertise goes beyond just, you know, one person or even one engineering consulting firm. And, you know, I just wanted to highlight that is a strength that our company brings, you know, to potential partnership with the town of Cape Charles.
All right. Thank everybody. Appreciate it.
I had one gentleman submit a comment that he asked to be read tonight.
Okay.
Would you get the mic?
Okay, thank you. This comment was emailed by Ryan and Aaron Foster at 125 Strawberry Street. Said, I would like to express my gratitude and encourage you to proceed with the sale of our utility to Virginia Water for the win-win scenario of expected rate decrease as well as water quality improvement. I appreciate our current treatment center and tested quality. However, there must be broken or degraded main service lines throughout the town to result in water quality issues by the time it enters the residential homes. A high majority of people I know have installed whole home water filtration systems, including us, to make the water drinkable at a cost of several $100s per year. Prior to this, our dogs would literally vomit after drinking and humans would have GI issues at best. I would like to present 2 pictures further demonstrating the condition of the water quality from the tap. One picture is of the outdoor shower head revealing shells or mineral buildup, and the other is a new water filter next to one that's been used for only a few months. Thank you for your time and diligence in evaluating the proposals with our citizens in mind. It is much appreciated. Do you want me to pass the pictures?
AJ, we're done.
Oh, well, one
I said
thing.
after Frank.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to kind of cover it. Well, statistics are used to make forecasts, and when you put yourself on the line to almost guarantee things, then you have to allow for the possibility that everything's going to break down at once, you know, violating usual statistics. But statistically, that happens sometimes. So, you know, you got to kind of allow for things. And we got a lot of pipes that could break at one time. So I think you have to allow a little consideration for talent. Yeah.
All right. I do want to thank everybody for coming and do value everybody's input. And, you know, if you've got any more questions, you can email John or Libby. I would like to ask John if we could have some printouts down at Kathy's office at the water, so if people that don't have computers, they can swing by the water to pick up copies of what you've been sending out, so everybody
Certainly.
has copies of that. And if we could have some copies here Saturday, because it seems like there's some people here tonight that would like to have some copies tonight.
Sure.
So with that being said, again, thank everybody, and can I get a motion to dismiss?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.